Hey there, welcome to That Dang Dad. My name is Phil, and tonight I'm getting back to my roots. Just a man, a camera, and a couple of cutaway gags. Tonight I want to talk about courage, and I'm going to be drawing both from my past as a former cop and from the present here in the midst of a deadly pandemic. Just in case you're not aware, I'm now a police and prison abolitionist, so even when I speak approvingly about certain parts of police training, ultimately I don't support the existence of the entity. I just think we can learn some interesting things from it. I've been thinking about this topic obsessively ever since I had a really strange interaction at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. My workplace had just started transitioning to 100% work from home, and all the small talk during the first few minutes of meetings was about how people were adjusting and all the little annoyances and sacrifices and surprises that we were finding at the beginning of these unprecedented times. Right before a weekly video conference got up to speed, I was chatting with another coworker, one who happens to be kind of a Ned Flanders-style super Christian. He was disappointedly discussing some of his kids' sporting events getting canceled due to the pandemic, and I was offering him supportive man grunts as is appropriate for the workplace. As we began to discuss whether they would transition from in-person church to online church for a while, I will never forget his next words to me. His voice took on this kind of righteous fervor, and he said, "I refuse to live in fear. My hope is in God and in things beyond this world. If it's my time, it's my time. I'm just not gonna let fear rule my life." And I was stunned. I mean, we weren't talking about something like fear of failure or fear of intimacy, abstract emotional fears that can hold us back from living life to the fullest. We were talking about an infection that at that time was killing so many people, New York was digging mass graves. I was also shocked because, having grown up deeply Christian myself, I could recognize in my coworker that very Christian fascination with martyrdom. Deep down, every Christian likes to believe that they have enough faith to be tortured or killed for their religion, and I could see my coworker adopting that posture of defiant self-sacrifice. And it was all I could do not to say what I really wanted to say, which was, well, you might be comfortable dying, but do you feel that way about your boys? Don't you want to protect them instead of just leaving it to chance? A little pro tip from your internet dad. Never bring up the death of someone's children to score rhetorical points. That is not a way to win friends or influence people. Anyway, the meeting started. We went on to discuss sales projections or reporting dashboards or whatever it was, but I was completely thrown off from this exchange. It's not that I don't respect people's faith or think they're stupid for placing hope in things outside of our physical experience. It's that a global health emergency was being treated like a question of spiritual courage instead of a question of infrastructure and process. In the abstract, I admire somebody who believes in something so strongly that they're willing to give their lives for it. But I grew up in conservative Christianity too, and needlessly rejecting modern methods of illness prevention to prove your faith is not a core tenet of any church I ever attended. In fact, I distinctly remember an old joke pastors used to tell from the pulpit. Basically, there's a flood and a guy is sitting on the roof as water is rising higher and higher. Someone on a rowboat comes by to rescue him, and the guy says, "No, I have faith. God will rescue me." Then somebody on a speedboat comes by, and the guy says the same thing. Then a rescue helicopter comes by, and a guy says the same thing, till the water washes him away to his death. When he gets to heaven, he stands in front of God, and he says, "Lord, I had faith that you would rescue me. Why did you abandon me?" And God looks down at the guy and says, "What are you talking about? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter." As the pandemic wore on, we started to see lots of protests, first against mask mandates and business closures, then against vaccines. And again, one of the common refrains among conservative protesters was a refusal to live in fear. Conservative pundits and Congress creeps complained that a climate of fear was some sort of means of controlling the population. Many of them seemed to be saying that making a decision based on fear was somehow illegitimate, that it was even un-American or un-Christian. And as much as I don't agree, I do understand culturally where this impulse comes from. Beyond the martyrdom fetish that some evangelicals operate with, general United States culture is very obsessed with courage, particularly battlefield courage. We love stories of lone warriors facing impossible odds, braving the storm, going to any length to rescue a loved one or kill the bad guy. I mean, American gun culture is pretty much predicated on the idea that a doughy 40-year-old in house slippers is ready, willing, and able to John Wick a legion of burglars should they breach the sacred perimeter of his McMansion. And one of the places that this culture bubbles up is in how the average American treats cops, and in how the average cop self-mythologizes.
Cops are the thin blue line between order and chaos, selflessly running towards gunfire, perpetually risking their lives every day as our cities are overrun by hordes of filthy, savage, degenerate... you know.
Apart from the fact that police work isn't even in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in the United States, and the fact that more cops died from COVID than in glorious Mortal Kombat in the past year, and die more from car crashes than gunfights in previous years. Would it surprise you to learn that police training has a much different take on how cops should behave in dangerous situations? As a cop, you were taught very early on about the concept of tombstone courage, meaning that sense of bravado that has enticed cops to run after armed gunmen into unfamiliar areas alone, or tempted them to drive 100 miles an hour through a busy intersection during a pursuit and get themselves killed. The area I worked in was pretty busy, full of drugs and guns and gangs. Our training taught us to take those things very seriously, to always have backup, to always wear our protective gear. Officers were written up and suspended for not wearing their ballistic vests on duty. Officers who rushed into danger alone were not celebrated as brave heroes. They were chewed out by supervisors and by their fellow officers. And that's not to say cops never have to run into danger, but they're generally trained to do so carefully, with consideration and planning and the proper tools, and a mindset of living, not dying. In fact, that's part of why police work is so toxic and dangerous to the public. Cops are taught that their safety and their need to avoid danger outweighs their duty to preserve the life of the community. How many unarmed people have been shot by cops only for the justification to be, "Oh, I thought he was reaching for his waistband. I feared for my life." If a cop gets scared, he's trained to kill somebody rather than wait to find out if that person was actually a threat. You know the cop motto. Better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I bring all this up because I think we need to have a reckoning with the concept of courage, particularly in the United States where I live. I think courage is a beautiful thing, but it's been infected by this macho meathead mindset that completely perverts everything good about it. Courage is broadly defined as the ability to do something that you know to be difficult and dangerous, or the ability to withstand and persevere in the face of fear, pain, or grief. Nowhere in that definition does courage demand a person minimize the danger, the difficulty, or the degree of fear, pain, or grief they are confronting. What courage demands is that we commit ourselves to a duty or a principle that is more important than the suffering being posed by the situation in front of us. In fact, take it from me, one of the most courageous things you can do is actually admit your fear and vulnerability to people and ask for help. It's scary to drop that brave face and be open about what scares you or what pains you, partly because people might mock you for it, partly because people might exploit it. It takes a real commitment to the principles of intimacy and solidarity to reveal your squishy underbelly to another person in the hopes that they reveal theirs to you and you can both support each other. That's why I'm just so irritated with the conservative evangelical posture of defiance and toxic individualism during the pandemic, because what it tells me is that they value their pride and their convenience over human life. That they are willing to endure the suffering of mass casualties in their community in order to chase a very self-centered concept of autonomy. I suppose that's a version of courage, but those definitely aren't values I think Christians would love to be associated with, given the Bible's commands to, prioritize your neighbor over yourself. And look, I know not every Christian acted like this, and beyond that, I understand how conservative evangelicals felt during the pandemic. Society was shutting down, their weekly refuge from the secular world was in jeopardy, and it was painful to lose that time of connection and intimacy at church and in their community. That's extremely valid. What's not valid is denying the reality in front of your face at the expense of everyone around you, pretending it's just a flu, pretending it's normal for elderly and disabled people to get wrecked by disease, pretending negligence by you and your community won't make the pandemic last longer and kill more people. It is not valid and certainly not courageous to remain intentionally ignorant just because you don't like what the truth would demand from you. True courage is rising to meet reality, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when it's painful, even when it asks you to make sacrifices. True courage is owning that fear and that pain, naming it, and dare I say, honoring it? Because let's face it, for the most part, if something scares you, there's probably a good reason for that. Heights are scary because falling is deadly. Snakes and spiders are scary because they can bite you and make you sick. Public speaking is scary because you might fart on stage. Moving away to a new town is scary because you might be all alone for a while. Loved ones dying is scary because a world without them feels very empty. Quitting your job to pursue your passions is scary because you might be broke for a long time. Coming out to your family is scary because they might reject you. Transitioning is scary because you might lose your friends and your job. Protesting injustice is scary because cops or white supremacists might kill you and get away with it. What if the fear we feel isn't a weakness, but simply our brains and our bodies sending us a signal to move carefully and with due consideration? What if fear is simply our cue to make sure that we've gathered as much information, support, and safety equipment as possible before we move forward? What if our fear is on our side and it just wants to see us succeed and to thrive? If that's the case, it wouldn't just be pointless to ignore our fears and minimize the dangers around us. It would be downright counterproductive to our goals. Now, I'm not saying that all fears are rational. I'm not saying that all fears need to be acted upon, but I am proposing that we perhaps organize a truce between us and our fears, that we agree to hear them out and then to courageously live out our values with all the information available to us. You don't have to live in fear, but you should probably learn to live with it. Anyway, what do you think? How do you approach your own fear? What does living courageously look like to you? Why don't you tell us in the comments? If you enjoyed this video, please slap that like button and don't be afraid to subscribe. In fact, perhaps the most courageous thing you could possibly do tonight is share this video with somebody that you think might find it interesting. Oh, and before I go, I wanted to let you know about a little project I've been working on. I'm from an era when mixtapes and CD samplers were a great way to discover new music, and I miss it terribly. So me and some creator friends have whipped up several 5-song CD samplers. We've put them in YouTube playlists, and I have them in a library on my YouTube homepage. I'll put a link in the description. I think it's got a decent variety of vibes going right now, and I hope to keep adding to it. So check it out. You might find some new music or a new creator to enjoy. Anyway, like always, I appreciate you spending time with me. Hope to see you on the next one. Have a good night.